Welcome to Art Crush, a podcast with artists Fee Marks and Paula Telizyn, where we talk about being an artist in 2026, running an art business, existing as a woman in the art world, and more. Hello, Fee.
Good afternoon, Paula. And whatever time it is you're listening.
Exactly. Good morning from me. Well, today we wanted to talk about staying sane in an ever-changing online marketing world, otherwise known as there are no quick fixes, no get-rich-quick schemes available for artists or anyone really, to create success. And this is coming from the perspective of both sides. So I've sold art, I've taught artists how to sell art. You've sold art and are living as an artist right now. And so we can see that with the changes that are going on in the world, which obviously have an impact, unfortunately, and the changes that are going on with people's priorities, there's an impact on art selling. So you've done courses with me. You've done a lot of online work. You've been marketing for, I don't know, what, 8 years now with your
Yeah.
art career. Yeah. And things this year are challenging.
Yeah, I think part of it as well, Paula, is that deciding if you want to do stuff in order to sell your art that you're not particularly keen on. It's like deciding how much do I want to sell my art? How much do I want to compromise where I'm at? Because I know personally, I like having that one-to-one client. Somebody falls in love with my work and what I'm saying, and somebody buying it. And we've talked a lot on the podcast and between ourselves about doing stuff, trying to get brand deals, working with big corporations, working collaboratively with other businesses. And that is, for me personally, a real challenge because I was so focused on this is what my ideal client is, this is what they do, and then suddenly it's not just changing who your ICA is, it's changing perhaps the whole structure of your business. So it's a big one.
Yeah, it's absolutely a big one because people also have shifted how they interact and where they interact online. Algorithms have shifted as to what they show and don't show. We were even talking a little bit about what the algorithm prefers to show or who they prefer to show to people. And oftentimes it's polarizing people because the algorithm runs on negativity, but we don't want to focus on that as much. But understanding that if anybody is saying to you, I can turn you around and make you sell art in, a month or whatever, 30 days and you sold art, generally they're full of shit. Or they're targeting artists who haven't been marketing at all, therefore their art can't be seen, and so any positive response is seen as growth. It's really a tough thing, but because people's attitudes have changed, because we've got a lot of desire for in-person and real connection, artists need to actually stretch even further outside of their comfort zones than before. Like, I'm actually suggesting to artists to strategically pick networking groups. And in the past, historically, networking groups have been a waste of time for artists. But if you understand who you're trying to reach and who is in those groups that could potentially help you with introductions or, be the right people, it can be worth it.
I think that this is true. We're not, although we're obviously focusing on uh, being an artist and having a career and a business, this is true if you are or have been involved in any field of industry or work. You have to change. We're continually having to evolve. And that's why when you see those adverts on social media for people to saying, join my group, pay this amount, and I'll get you selling thousands of pounds or thousands of dollars worth of art in a month. This is how much. It's not true. It can have a quick fix. maybe somebody, as you said, Paula, who isn't selling, doesn't know about marketing. Yes, that will make an impact, but it won't last. And it's about having that determination and wanting to succeed, but also knowing you have to change. And if you don't want to change, which is very valid, but your business might not thrive. So it is a tricky one. And as you said, over the time we've known each other, which is like 8 years now, we've had to change our ideas. So things that Paula was saying to me back during COVID time of don't do this, don't make prints, don't do the other, all of that gets thrown up in the air when things change. So when you are picking a mentor or somebody to work with, make sure that they are also aligned to change.
Yeah, that does make a huge, huge difference because how I market my own business has changed as well and asked me to do things that I wouldn't otherwise have preferred to do. So paying attention to what's going on is important. The bottom line is that in order to successfully sell your art, people have to know you exist. They have to know what your art looks like, that it's available for purchase. And you have to just keep doing that over and over again. People can't buy from you if they don't know you exist. People can't buy from you if they know you exist but don't know how to buy or how much your work is. And they won't buy from you if they don't actually like you. So you have to show up. How you show up, where you show up, that changes with whatever's going on in the world. So that's the bottom line, but there is no get rich quick. If you are in one of those sort of capsule groups where it is 30 days or 60 days and you'll sell art and blah 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 blah, you end up in this sort of emotional bubble where you're working alongside other artists and other people and it's very energetic and wonderful and great, but once that time period ends, you're left back to your own devices and you're sort of floating around going, "What the hell do I do next?" How do I stay motivated? There's no accountability. There's no support beyond that little bubble unless the person or company is selling you more access.
That's what we've talked about before as well, that momentum. It's keeping the momentum going. And for example, this year, I made a decision to try and reposition my art business. So, all the things I've done for the last couple of years, all the art shows that I've done, I'm not doing. Now, obviously, that initially will have an impact on my sales because I'm not selling at places where I might have sold before. I knew before I was at the top end of these art fairs, and now n- I'm priced, overpriced for the art fairs that are in my area. This will be different if you're if you're in London or you're doing the really big art fairs. That will be different. But as we've talked about, that costs money, and so you have to accept that you have to take risks and not panic when you get a knockback or you suddenly think, oh, I'm not saying, because it's very easy to go, oh, I'm going to drop my prices. I'm going to go back to where I was. I'm just going to go back to where I was because I'm comfortable there, but you won't progress. And if that's where you want to be, you don't want to go any further, we've talked about the bus and getting on the bus and where you get off on your art career. And that is a decision only you can make individually. Nobody else can make that decision for you.
You have to really sit down and take a hard look at what your goals are with your business, and not just the goals you think you are allowed to have. So we've talked about this as well in the past about women who are told they can't be ambitious or you're just playing around or whatever. As a woman, sit down and actually admit to yourself what your really scary goals are, the ones that you can't believe that will happen, and admit that you also want them and see what you actually want from your art career. Because I've worked with so many wonderful, amazing artists over the years who have gone and said, you know what, actually, although I want the whatever, the Masters Art Fair, blah, 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 I'm just making the title up, but I feel like it's not me to want to strive for that. So I'm going to settle with showing my work in the coffee shop locally. Like that's
Yes.
so many artists, all of them women have put themselves as, well, actually, that's just too big for me, or I don't want people to think I'm trying too hard or whatever. So really have this conversation with yourself and admit the big stuff. Because if you can't admit the big stuff to yourself, how on earth are you going to make it happen? You're always going to self sabotage and fall short. And then when you go to hire a mentor or go take a course or whatever, you're going to end up in the wrong place because you're going to say, like, oh, I guess it's okay if I'm with these people who are selling art for 250 pounds, or, they just want to be known locally. That's where I belong. But you'll feel the whole time that you don't belong, and nothing will resonate well with you. And then you've just wasted your money working with programs that don't meet what you actually want. We are allowed to have what we want and to want what we want. We have to give ourselves this permission to
I
want.
I think that we're brought up as women that to be ambitious is a dirty word. It's not attractive. When you look at the language around women, how many of your friends, how many of your colleagues have actually said, whatever field again, have actually said, yep, I'm really ambitious. I'm really ambitious. I mean, the only person I think I've heard say that is me. Because I've been trained by the Telizyn, but because in my mind, being ambitious is about bettering yourself, improving your business, improving yourself. That's why we spend so long working on mindset. Nobody would do all this well-being stuff and meditation and fitness or anything like that if they were ambitious for their minds and their bodies. So why is it so bad to have the same desire in your business? Would you say that's the same in Canada?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it is the same in Canada, and I was just thinking as you were talking, like, I kept, the success of my very first company a secret. Like, I was able to
Mm.
support the family, pay for the mortgage, and 3 kids, and 3 cats, and a horse, and everything else, but everybody around me assumed that we were barely scraping by. And because I was running the business, I was earning the money, my ex didn't work, and that's a whole other story, but it was just that assumption that anything that I could do was probably just cute and fun and whatever, and no, if I'd actually made the business something outside of my home, I could easily have done that and had a building and staff and everything else. Like, it was that successful, but I never.
But almost you were ashamed. You
Yeah.
were ashamed of being a success and ashamed of having ambition
Know
and
that shame was the right word, but I did definitely felt like I wasn't worthy of it. Right? I was surprised it happened. I don't know that I was ashamed of it, but
you were lucky. It's back to the, "Oh, women are lucky and men
yeah.
work hard." It's
Yeah.
back to that old thing. Oh, it was just luck. It's just
Yeah.
luck that I sold this. The right person came along at the right time. Nothing to do with the work, the hard work that I've been putting in for months and years in getting myself out there. No, it was just luck. And that's why, as women, we need to pat each other on the back and ourselves on the back more often
Yeah.
because of what we're achieving against that language and the misogyny that has been there forever about how women behave. I read a lot of historical books, and one book I'm reading at the moment, in one of the characters is an artist, and it's talking about she's being encouraged to send her work to the Royal Society show and, and being told, "But if you do, just put your initials on your art. Don't let them know that you're a woman. You can't let them, otherwise there is no chance. There is no chance." Now, that's going back, whatever, 150 years, but we're not far off. We're not far off. I don't know what the percentages are for the Royal Academy show anymore, but I would be intrigued to know how many women and how many men, I'm going to Google it after we finish recording this, actually get accepted into the Royal Academy summer show now in 2026. And I would be very surprised if the bias wasn't still in the favour of men.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. I saw yesterday some of the comments about the Artemis 2 crew, 3 men, 1 woman, and the comments I think are pretty standard for anything. The post was celebrating the achievement of this crew for being the farthest humans ever from Earth and, celebrating, the female astronaut. I don't know any of their names, to be honest, even though one's from London, Ontario, but I don't remember any of their names. But anyway, they were celebrating their achievement, and, the comments were things like, "Well, she's, too far away to make a sandwich. She should get back to the kitchen," and, "She was just there to be pretty for the other astronauts," and things like that. That attitude is very pervasive. But I wanna pull this back to the idea that you can't get rich quick with courses and things. There's no get rich quick in the art world. There is showing up and being seen. But if we understand as women that we are facing hurdles that men don't face, we are facing the ageism that men don't get. Men grow old beautifully and refined, and women become haggard and tired, that kind of thing. We are facing the if you're not this perfect model, the algorithm necessarily won't push your posts out, but what does work is understanding what you want, understanding that people need to see you and get to know you, and understanding where your ideal buyers are and who you should collaborate with, and skip all this, "I can make you sell your work in 30 days or 60 days," or whatever, and go for the long-term successes. Understand that this is a marathon and not a sprint.
And it's not a diagonal line like anything.
No.
It's a wavy line, that we do have pits and troughs. And also, I think about redefining what success is. Yes, financial reward is really important because we deserve to be paid for our work. We deserve to have a living wage. There is nothing wrong with that. And to have things like to go on holiday, to have things that other people have. Why are we having to continually sacrifice for our art? Go, well, I've chosen to do this, so I can't do this. That's not right. And we need to fight that. But there are other successes. And I think being known and people appreciating your art and saying, oh, yes, I know who you are. Somebody did that to me the other day. Turned up somewhere and I said, "Oh, hi, I'm Female." Somewhere, oh, and they said, "Yes, I know who you are. I've seen your work on social media." And I was like, "Oh, good." To me, that is a little success because all the work I do every day on social media means that someone I've never met before, didn't even know their name, but they know who I am. That is a success. So we need to have and we talk about wins a lot, Paula, don't we? And on the podcast, we like to really focus on raising up women and being positive. And so when you are making your goals, don't just make them financial. Yes, the financial side is always going to be in there, particularly if you've got a family to support. But also, there are other wins as well.
And wins are not pie. So if somebody else has a win, it doesn't mean that they've stopped you from having a win. It's not like there's a limited number of slices of wins. I've said this for years, and I will say this to the end of my life, that we can all have wins. It's not limited. There's not just one person in the world buying art. There are other people. And so if we take each other's wins and celebrate and go, okay, so Fee sold 2 or 3 paintings, that's great. That means people are buying art. Now I'm more motivated. Not, oh, Fee, what a bitch. But people have that attitude, which just stuns the hell out of me because it just means that they're feeling inadequate. They're not looking at what's really going on. And the data says that if somebody is selling their art successfully, then there's room for you to sell your art too.
It's also not appreciating your own uniqueness. That is why it's not a competition, because someone who buys my art wouldn't necessarily buy off any other artist. Or depending on what your taste is, what speaks to you, what the purpose of it. There is so many things about buying a product. And so that's why it's not a competition. Unless you are doing exactly the same as other people, which say if you are a pet portrait artist, which is fine. I'm not slagging off pet portrait artists, but there is a market specifically for pet portrait artists. And if there's someone in your area who does exactly the same as you, then that could be a bit of a competition. But generally, if your art is unique, you are using your own voice, you're aware of what you're doing, then there is no competition.
And I think it's nicer when we see each other as colleagues instead of competition, right? Like it makes all the difference to how we move through the world and the communities that we are a part of and that we create around ourselves. It makes such a huge difference. If I looked at every artist as competition to my own work, or because I'm not actively selling right now unless somebody comes to me for a commission, but if I did look at in the past as artists as competition, it would have ruined the experience for me because everybody's art is very, very different when you stop and cultivate a style. But I think what's most important is if something isn't working, you have to look at your data when it comes to your marketing because you may have a week where there's a blip, where there's nothing going on, no reaction to your posts or no reaction to any cold outreach you might be doing or whatever. And that could be just a blip. If you look back over a month or over 2 months or whatever to see your numbers and your stats and all the data there, you could see that actually maybe what's changed, what's going on in the world, what am I doing differently that's not landing, what do I need to pay attention to? I think that's more important than anything else because it is a marathon. So looking at other artists and saying, "Well, ugh, they're all jerks and they're selling, but, their customers don't know anything," is just not a good use of time. But understanding that you can outlast by having a solid long-term and short-term goals, understanding that sometimes marketing has to change, so maybe you need to be showing locally if there's the right shows or connecting locally with people and getting introductions that you might need to be doing some strategic networking, not just any willy-nilly networking, but strategic networking, and understanding that maybe if a platform like Facebook used to work for you and now it's not, maybe your audience has left because Meta's also going through this huge change where they're booting people off the platform and people are losing their accounts, and it's thousands of accounts a day. Now, there are 3 billion people on Meta products, so it's not like there's a noticeable dip, really, but I've seen the complaints on Reddit for people who've lost their accounts suddenly, and I'm seeing a shift in who I see on Facebook. And so the people who are staying may or may not be your ideal collectors. So paying attention to all of the data is what's gonna keep you going long term. But having those long-term goals, understanding that, yes, if there's a blip, it may feel like it's easier to get off. Fine, get off the bus, go do something else, come back later, whatever. Um, it's fine, no judgment, but you've gotta figure out what's best for you, and you can't do that if you don't admit what you really want from your art career, if you don't understand that there are gonna be good weeks and bad weeks, and you don't pay attention to what's going on in the world and online that affects your marketing.
Also, just to remind people, because I still feel that there's a lot of still a lot of snobbery around social media. And I still think there are a lot of artists out there who think that Instagram is somehow the higher end. This is where artists need to be, blah, blah, blah. Now, Instagram is also owned by Meta. And, so don't turn your nose up. Just if you're going to be on another platform, be on one that's not Meta, because there's no point in doing Facebook and Instagram and then losing both your accounts and then being like, oh, how did that happen? So, yeah, the Instagram thing I just don't get, because even when I started doing social media 8, 9 years ago, Instagram was not the place, but it was when it was initially, it still carries that little bit of kudos.
Yeah, before Meta bought it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instagram and Twitter were where I sold art. Those were the platforms, and I sold a lot of art on both of those platforms when Twitter was good and I could go live painting and sell my work as I was painting it. But that's like a different world now. I mean, obviously, Twitter doesn't exist, certainly not in any way that I wish to acknowledge, and Instagram is completely different and unhinged, but it's still a place where people create success. The trick is just
Yeah.
being very clear. Who are you? What do you want? Who's your ideal buyer? And how do I go find them? Where are they at? And then how do I make them notice me? Not passively waiting, not joining a, like we said, a get rich quick scheme, but actually doing things intentionally and even methodically, which I guess are words, especially methodically, that may be problematic for some artists, but figure it out.
Try things that you might think they're a bit bonkers,
Yeah.
but you still try them. My homework from Paula this week is something that could be bonkers or it could work really, really well. Because I do a lot of reading and a lot of my work is based on history and historical fiction and all of that. This week's homework, probably be next week's homework as well, the rate I'm going, but is to go on Goodreads, find the people who have written good reviews about books that I've enjoyed that are around the subjects that I paint, find them on another platform and follow them there and see if they are going to be a potential buyer. Now that seems very remote, but let's see. Let's see if it works. I could be sitting here in a month's time going, "God, wow, that was it. That was genius." But we don't know. And I would imagine there is not, or not, and forgive me if I'm wrong, dear listeners, but I imagine there's not that many people out there who are continually thinking of trying to where they find their ideal clients, which doesn't necessarily isn't the traditional routes.
Yeah, typically artists inundate interior designers and home stagers with inquiries to the point where I think that the designers and stagers are probably sick and tired of getting pitches and not great pitches either because they tend to get the ones that are unprepared and everything else. So thinking about who your ideal buyer is and understanding who resonates with your work and then figuring out how to get in front of them. And I'm not talking about harassing them or anything else. Like V said, just find the people who are already inclined to the subjects you're already creating and just connect with them, follow them, or whatever the term is for the platform you're going to find them on. And so that they will become aware of you. People are inherently curious. When I put LinkedIn connections out, connection requests out, I find that the people then go to my LinkedIn profile, they look at it, and if they like it, they'll connect back with me, accept my connection. And if they don't, that's fine. It is what it is, right? But
Exactly.
people are inherently curious. So if I follow somebody on Instagram, I get the same thing where they look at my profile, I'm assuming, because then they follow me back or they don't. And so, because people are curious.
Which is what we do. We do that as well. If someone follows me and it says follow back, I wouldn't ever follow anyone back without looking at their profile first, just because there's so many blinking spam accounts and this, that, and the other, but also to see, is this in my interest to follow this person back? Do I want to know them? We're selective with the friends and people we have in our lives. Same thing in your business. Who do you want in your business?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So hopefully this topic has helped a little bit clarify that marketing has existed forever, forever. And it really hasn't changed other than the tools that we use. Make people discover you and then let them get to know, like, and trust you, and they'll buy from you or not, right? That's it. That's the foundation of marketing. So you can skip all the get rich quick that grabs your money and gives you maybe a little bubble of success that immediately evaporates once the program is done or once the intensive challenge or whatever is done, and just understand, make people discover you, let them get to know, like, and trust you, and there you got your marketing.
And find your community,
Yeah.
the community that supports you. So, all our listeners out there, you are now part of our community. So, if you have any questions or any really wacky ideas that you have tried out to find your ideal clients, drop us a comment and we'll get back to you.
Yes. All right, and we'll see you in the next episode. New episodes come out every Saturday.